All right, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA today again with Mr. Good Colby, ready to look at an upcoming fight, which is pretty exciting. Mr. Marvin Vettori versus Paolo Costa. I'm pretty pumped for this one, man. Pretty big fight.
Same. Yeah, I'm really keen. The battle of Izzy's leftovers, as I like to think.
That's a funny
So
thing.
it should be good.
Yeah, Izzy's leftover. It's kind of funny. What I don't like is the fact that it's just on a fight night card. I wish it was on a pay-per-view and we could have all the press conferences and everything, because these guys are pretty like wordy and get into it a bit. So
Yeah.
it would have been good to see these two facing off a lot in the verbal exchanges, right?
Yeah, I would have loved it because, there's obviously bad blood in that between. They've been back and forth against each other on Twitter and stuff like that. But I think maybe one positive is that because it is a main event, it will be 5 rounds. So that will sort of affect the fight. Whereas if it wasn't a pay-per-view, we would get to see sort of more interactions and stuff, but it would only be the 3-rounder.
That's true. That's true. And in that respect, I would say the fight favors Vittori a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because of his experience with 5-round fights.
Yeah, spot on 100%. Because, as you know, like Costa's a absolute wrecking machine. But as you've seen when fights sort of get in the deeper water and that, if you can't put your way sort of early, it's not always his sort of best performance or his best night.
Exactly. Like, how does it, you look back at his fights and he's, like you said, he comes out like hard as hell. Watching him fight against what's his name? Yoel Romero. He was just like, they came out, they smashed so hard, both of them working really high pace for the first round. Second round, midway, you could already see he was very tired looking. So, yeah, how long does it last? He can be a wrecking machine, and he's wrecked so many people in the first round. But then after that, what's he got left? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly right. Unless who knows, because this would be like, obviously, Izzy's his first loss in that professionally. So who knows, he might have sort of realized that his style it's all right. It got him to the dance, but it sort of could have won it to him. So who knows, he might try and switch up his style a little bit, come out maybe a bit more calculated and sort of try to save his gas tank, especially knowing it's going to be 5 rounds this one. But then again, he might just get drunk off wine the night before, apparently, and just try and knock Vettori out in 1 round. So nobody really knows with him.
Exactly. Hopefully he's gotten over his alcoholism and he's gonna come in clean. But looking at his history, man, it's kind of amazing. Like he was unstoppable. He was just knocking everyone out. Like he had nearly every one of his fights before he fought Israel Adesanya was just TKOs in the first round, pretty much. I think he had 1 or 2 in the second and that, but mostly KOs with punches. And then even against Raul Romero, looked very, very impressive. And then he comes up against Israel and he put some sort of voodoo curse on him or something. He just like froze on the spot and just didn't look himself. Like, we can be honest with that. I don't know what it was, but whether it was drinking, whether it was nerves, what it was, but he fucking just wasn't the same man that he was in his other fights, right?
Yeah, exactly right. I think obviously the Izzy style and that obviously would have still had a sort of another factor into it. Because if you look at like who he fought, there wasn't anyone of elite who was probably the best striker he fought before was probably Uriah Hall. And even Uriah Hall had some pretty good like successful moments just staying behind his jab and stuff like that until Paulo's body kicks and everything started to add up. But yeah, like you said, he didn't look himself against Izzy. Was it because he smashed a bottle of wine the night before? Like, who knows? Was it all the trash talk and the bright lights? And he just wanted to rush in and sort of take Izzy's head off with a one punch, but it was hard to manage the distance there against such an elite level striker. Though, yeah, I don't think he looked himself in that fight either. But regardless, I still think this is a sort of, like I said, it's like battle of Izzy's leftovers. Like, I feel like Izzy's at the very top of the division. He showcased against these two. And it's just sort of cool to see like who can bounce back the best against losing to the champ and possibly get another rematch.
Yeah, I'm wondering that too, because like you're an undefeated fighter, just killing it. You get against Israel Adesanya in the biggest fight of your life, one of the biggest fights in the last few years. And he just got destroyed and embarrassed and pumped on the mat and just really came back badly. He hasn't had a fight since then. And during that time, we've got Vettori, who's fought Hermanson, Holland, and Adesanya, and by no means was he smashed by Adesanya. He got beaten, but he wasn't destroyed in the same way as Costa was like that. So again, the MMA mass, like we talked about last time, in MMA mass, you'd say it's Vettori's fight probably, but then when you look back at the old the old Paulo Costa, him coming up. If you hadn't fought Israel Adesanya, you'd probably be putting your money on him straight away. You know.
Yeah, exactly right. Because like you said, yeah, Paulo before that Izzy fight was an absolute wrecking ball. But then again, Marvin has looked a lot more calculated and everything with his fight. Like even though Kevin Holland clipped him a few times on the feet, he was able to just out wrestle him, out control him. Marvin obviously didn't do. I think he sort of didn't have as much success as he did in the first fight against Izzy compared to the second fight. But Izzy's obviously evolved a lot from them too. But I do think Marvin's obviously evolved a lot from that fight as well. But it will be interesting to see how Marvin's going to bounce back from this and actually what his approach for this sort of 5-round fight will be as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like as we just mentioned, he's had 3 5-round fights in a row since Costa's only 5-round fight, which he didn't make the distance anyway. So in that respect, he's going to have a lot more experience, cage experience, 5-round experience, and even within this last period, he's been so experienced in comparison to Costa. And like you said, he's a very well-rounded guy, right? Like he seems to have everything. He's got a few submissions. I think that's his main technique of winning: submissions, some points victories, and a couple of KOs. But he's not like a massive puncher. He seems to have reasonable pressure. You know, he likes to dirty box and clinch a little bit along the fence. That's one thing that's interesting is both of them like that on the fence position. So it's going to be who can win that position. You know, Vettori seems to like to press up against the cage, but then so does Costa. So kind of interesting to see. And Marvin just seems to have a little bit more like technical skills, right? A little bit more angling, a little bit more thought goes into how he fights, I would say, compared to Costa.
Yeah, definitely. I think the technical it's like, I think, yeah, almost certainly the technical edge would have to go to Vettori unless Paulo Costa comes out like a brand new fighter. But then on the other hand, Paulo definitely has an athletic advantage with the explosiveness, the power, the speed and everything like that. So it's going to sort of be like the technical guy who's been in these 5-round fight positions before versus the guy who was just steamrolling everyone off like explosiveness and athleticism. Took his first loss against some guy he couldn't put away, and then depends how like Paulo Costa sort of can rebound with that. If he's gonna be like, oh no, I have to be a bit more calculated. If he really went back to the drawing board, maybe tried to implement a bit more wrestling, a few level changes, and mixing up his striking and everything as well. Because obviously, if that guy shoots on you, he's a big, strong, explosive guy. If he wants to get you down, he probably can. But is he going to do that, or is he just going to try and throw them big body kicks and just try and take your head clean off? And I think that's another thing. Vettori does have a good chin. As you see, Izzy put Costa away pretty cleanly, but a lot of people have hit Vettori hard, even though he's got hit clean. He's never been KO'd, has he? I don't think so.
No, he's not been KO'd.
No, he hasn't. Yeah, never been KO'd. Yeah, so his chin's definitely there. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and Costa got dropped by Hall, Romero, and also by Adesanya, man. So he throws himself into the fire and walks forward. It's kind of interesting to watch his style, though. Like I was watching, he's just straight line attacks, and he kind of like leans back. He's like leaning back as they're attacking. He's like leaning off balance, and he's not in a good position to counter. If you watch his stand up, it's kind of weird. He can't counter because he's in a bad position. He sits back, and then when he has his opportunity, he puts his body forward heavy and comes in with his combinations. So if someone's actually putting pressure on him a little bit more continuously, which at times Vettori likes to do, I think he might be able to catch him a little bit because Costa seems to like to be the one at initiating the attack and being on top of the person. He's have a look. He's got a weird sort of balance that he sits back and evades a little bit and then just goes straight in and throws his combination. So it'll be interesting to see how much pressure either of them can assert because they're kind of both a little bit pressure fighters and they're coming to head to head. So who wins that pressure exchange against the fence as well? It'll be interesting. Apart from the stand up, when they get to the fence, who's going to win that? You got to think, like you said, he's pretty, Costa's pretty physically imposing, So and he looks massive. Like, is he going to have the strength advantage or the skill advantage in the wrestling? He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu versus a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. So that might kind of cancel each other out, but I'm not so sure in the wrestling department.
Yeah, exactly right. But then again, it will come down to like if Costa does want to implement his wrestling, say if that's his successful game plan and he's surprised and he's like, okay, he's able to get Vettori against the cage, dirty box him, clinch him and that. Is he able to keep that up for under 5 rounds is a whole nother question. If this was a 3-round fight, I'm like, oh, who knows? Like, if Paulo does rely on, like, he might be losing, the round gets a few explosive bursts, 2 or 3 big moments that snatch for a round, he might be able to do that for 3 rounds. But over 5 rounds, I think that's a lot less likely, where a lot more of a sort of skill aspect will come into it.
Yeah. Actually, I'm kind of thinking on the other side of what you said. I'm thinking that Vettori might push him against the cage and try and engage in the clinch just to negate his power a bit and drain him a little bit. So because he can take that edge off him in the first round and the second round, then I think he'll be right for the picking in the third, fourth, fifth. I don't think he's going to have anything left. So I would say Marvin will be the one that presses the pace and pushes him against the cage. I think that's the game plan I would do if I was him anyway. If it's successful, of course, he might have to change it, but I think wear him out in the clinch and then take that edge off that explosive power. I haven't really seen anything to suggest that Costa's like an amazing submission artist, and his record definitely doesn't suggest that. So it'd be interesting to see how they win if they do go in that direction.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I think this being 5 rounds definitely gives Vettori the edge and the factor in that. And then I think it is going to be like, once they touch gloves, who decides to sort of take the lead, take the initiative? Is Costa just going to try and march him down and be reckless like he always is, sort of thing? And just like you said, he might put himself in awkward positions where he can't counter properly, and Vettori can sort of get him there, but then he might be able to, like he does, explode out of nowhere and just catch you or something? Or is Vettori going to be able to like exploit them holes where he is out of balance and just really sort of pick him apart, get him to a fence, grind him out, sap his energy, and just take him into the deeper water?
Yeah. I would say, again, on the secret for Costa would be just to use what he's got, which is that explosive power in the first. Yeah. I can't see him doing any long, drawn-out game. It seemed when he fought Izzy that he was trying to, like, maybe he was thinking, if I go too hard in the first round, I'm going to burn out, so I'll just take it easy. And by the time he thought about moving, it was too late. He'd already his legs chopped to hell. So I think his chance is just go with his old style and just blitz him. And either way, he's going to go out like a warrior, right? He'll go out either with a win or a loss, but people will love him again anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what I think it will come down to. It's like, I think it'd be like Paulo just comes in. If it was anyone else, I think I'd probably favor Costa a bit more, but purely that Vettori's, we've seen him get cracked by big, strong hitters and his chin's still there. So I don't think that gives me much confidence. Obviously, Paulo can still put anyone out, but I think it's a lot less likely than, say, someone else he's previously fought or someone else in that sort of top 5 of that division. So I think that's the advantage. But then again, he knows, he might have just been working on just coming forward, in and out movement, staying based a lot more, got rid of a few of them bad tendencies, so he's not out of position so much, so he's more likely to counter more from more advantageous positions. Then he might be able to clip Marvin, especially early, and put him away.
So what's your final take on the fight? Who's going to win?
Right now, because if we're going off how I've previously seen the fights, I'm going to go Vettori I think Vettori by decision. I don't think he has the power to put him away, and I think Costa's tough, as we also, he is tough. He can take a punch. I think he's going to be able to stay in there for the 5 rounds against someone like Vettori, but I think Vettori might drop maybe the first round, worst case, maybe the first 2 rounds, but I think after that, Vettori is going to really start taking over and sort of show his experience towards his later rounds and get the decision win.
Yeah, man, I feel like Costa's kind of lost his shine, that sometimes happens when someone's an unbeaten fighter and then they get smashed and he's getting defeated mentally by the look of it as well as physically. I think Vettori's going to get him too. I think that he just has to get out of those first 1 or 2 rounds, take the edge off Costa, and then I think he can just keep his good work rate. We know he's got great cardio. He can keep going into the 5th round. And hopefully, I mean, you'd guess his 3 last fights are decision fights, so you'd probably expect the same. But I'd really like to see him pull off a submission. He's done some good submissions in his career. It'd be good to get a sub, but I'm thinking the same as you, actually. Points win for Vettori. That's my pick as well.
Yeah. So we're both on the same page. Let's hope Costa doesn't come out looking like a brand new fighter and just bobs and Mike Titans him in the first 2 minutes. That wouldn't look good.
It might be fun to watch, though.
Oh, yeah, exactly right. Then be like, it's interesting. Costa's actually improved a bit.
That's it. You never know, do you? But I'd say most likely he's going down. Let's see how we go.
Yeah, that's what I think, Vettori.
Thanks again for your time and your opinion, man. Cheers.
No worries at all, bro. Cheers.